Hi, everybody! It's comic book time, and June was a good haul, a very good haul. G.I. Joe, for once, is the most numerous of the franchises this time around, which is very unusual. And there was one throw in that was a little bit different. That's maybe foretelling what's to come in the very near future in the Energon universe. So, but first up, we have the next issue of Void Rivals, which is issue number 30. So in this one, if you remember where the last issue left off, Derek and his father, the ruler of Agoria, had come before the Quintesson judge, and they were deemed to be innocent, yet they were still shoved into the pit of Sharkticon. So that's where we pick up. So they're kind of floundering in the juice of the Sharkticon tank, and suddenly Salila arrives out of nowhere and is ready to drag them to safety, except that Derek's dad is eaten by a Sharkticon before that can happen. So Derek loses his father, Agoria loses its ruler, and Derek and Salila are the only ones to survive that situation. And Salila brings Derek to Zerta Tryon. So Derek is kind of like unresponsive after, like he's just kind of lying there and he's just processing what happened, so he's not really participating in the conversation between Salila and Zerta Tryon. And so Salila is like, okay, great, I rescued Derek, now it's time to take the fight to these Quintessons and get them the hell off of our planet. And Zerta Tryon's like, Salila, no, it will take more than just me entering the fray to turn these Quintessons aside. I've battled them many times over the millennia I've been alive, and I know we need more help. And so Salila at first is like, what? So she's all pissed off, but then Zerta Tryon kind of convinces them that they need to leave and find the Cybertronians. They don't know whether to trust her or not, but what other choice do they have? And Zerta Tryon says there's only one ship on this planet that's leaving very soon that will allow you to escape undetected. So they go in search of this ship, and the ship in question is Pythona's, I forget what the ship is called, but that living ship that looks like an insect that the Pythona and her G.I. Joe Cobra Law brethren or whatever arrived on the planet when they chased the Quintessons to the planet to see what was going on. So Derek and Salila find Pythona and ask for help, ask if they can travel with them. At first, Pythona's like, who the hell are you? And she's about to turn them away. But then they mention the Cybertronians and stuff like that. So then Pythona's like, this could be interesting. Sure, come aboard. Let's see what happens, right? So they begin to make their escape, but they are damaged by the Quintesson War Judge, that supercharged Quintesson that entered the fray in the last issue, or maybe the issue before, I can't remember. And he does a bit of damage to the ship before it can take off. So they're airborne and they're space worthy, but they have damages. So Derek volunteers to go outside on the hull and check the damages and see if they can be repaired or not. Eventually reporting back that there's nothing he can do for the repairs. So they're moving in space, but they're damaged. And then as Derek talks to Salila after he comes back in from that mission to check the damages, she's very down in the dumps and depressed. Like, she's like, we abandoned our people. Like, what the hell is wrong with me? And Derek has to talk her down and say, there's nothing we could have done, but if we find the Cybertronians and bring them back, we could do a lot. Like, we haven't abandoned them. We will be back. We just need to see this mission through first, kind of thing. And then as the issue moved along, that was kind of the main arc of the story, but there was a couple of other things put in. Proximus, who is actually, we learn, is Salila's brother, and that little kid that he picked up a few issues ago when he was in prison or whatever it was, the two of them are moving through the landscape of Zertonia and talking about what to do. And so Proximus is determined to get off planet and to steal one of the ships to do so, because he senses that Salila has left on this ship, and he wants to make sure that she's okay, or she's not in too much over her head, sort of thing. So that's the only thing we see from them. That was a very brief kind of scene in the issue. And the other thing we see on Zertonia is Zalalak, the guy that leads the Zertonians, is attacked by the Quintesson War Judge after he damaged the Cobra Law ship, he shifted his attention to Zalalak and is about ready to take him down and whatever. And then Zalalak is like, his troops are like, yeah, let's get this thing. And Zalalak's like, no, we surrender. So he's seen enough death and carnage of his fellow Zertonians, so he issues an official surrender to the Quintesson War Judge. And that's pretty much all we see in this issue. So it was very quick paced, action packed, with a little bit of talking and whatnot in between. But yeah, very, very, very to the point kind of issue, and mostly again focusing on Derek and Salila, with a couple of other little things thrown in. But yeah, can't wait to see. Is this? Yeah, so this was part 6 of the Quintesson War. So they're obviously not done with the Quintessons yet. So I don't know why this was the last issue of the Quintesson War. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see what happens in the next issue to see why that is, or why that shouldn't have been. Who knows? We'll find out. All fucking righty roo. Next up, 3 issues of the Turtles. Issue 37 of the ongoing Saturday Morning Adventures subseries. In this one, it's starting with a new storyline, and we see Irma being robbed by a street tough, and suddenly a new mutant we looks like we've never seen before comes dashing out of the darkness and saves her. So the next thing we see is the Turtles at April O'Neil's apartment. Irma's there, and she's relating the details of this heroic deed from this new mutant. And they're like, "What kind of mutant was he?" And she's like, he was furry and like black and white. And they're like, "Was he a rabbit?" Thinking maybe Usagi Yojimbo was back. She's like, "No." She's like, "Maybe more like a bear or something." And they're like, "Oh, okay, we got to try and find this guy." So, but they're like, we don't know how we're going to find him. But so they go out on patrol and whatever, and they end up seeing another group of street toughs shaking down a guy that runs a hot dog stand. So they step in to stop this from happening. But this mutant is nearby, and he sees what's happening, and he thinks the turtles are the bad guys. So he jumps in and starts fighting the turtles, and they're like, "Hey, ho, ho." So they do scrap for a while before they can convince this guy that we are the good guys here. We're protecting this guy from the same type of guy you protected Irma from, right? So they get to talking, and they're like, "What's your name?" And I forget what his name is, to be honest. And he's a panda bear looking guy. That's what he is. And they're like, "Where'd you come from? Like, how did you get mutated? Whatever." And he goes, "Well, I'm not a mutant." He says, "I'm from a whole nother world." And he said, "I was chasing these twin sorceresses, Twixt and Tween, who had been stealing artifacts in my village or whatever, and I needed to foil them, but they're very much into riddles and stuff, so it's less a matter of defeating them physically with force and fighting, but trapping them in their own bargains and deals and riddles and whatnot." So he was able to do that, but as a punishment, they sent him to Earth as a punishment, and that's how he ended up here. But they've seen evidence that Twixt and Tween are actually in New York City as well, so they go hunting for her, or for them, and eventually track her down to this warehouse. And as they take the fight to Twixt and Tween, she manages, or they manage to shoot these purple electric kind of webs that they use as weapons onto Michelangelo, Raphael, and Donatello. So, which basically hypnotizes them and makes them do her bidding. So it's basically Leo and this panda guy versus Twixt and Tween, with the 3 other turtles also haranguing them, kind of thing, right? So Leo's like, "Do we just cut the webs off of them? Will that make my brothers better?" And he's like, "No, we need to get the girls to agree to restore them," sort of thing. So this is when the panda guy creates a riddle slash bargain to the 2 girls, that he'll let them go and then return to their whatever, if so and so happens. So he ends up tricking them. If I'm probably talking like an idiot here, but he ends up beating them at their own game and tricking them with logic and whatnot into letting the 3 turtles go, and then returning to their homeland. But before they go, he takes the little staff or scepter or whatever it is that the one of them uses to do all these magic things. He goes, "Oh, it's broken." They're like, "You reneged on our bargain." He said, "I told you I would return your scepter to you. I never said I wouldn't break it first," sort of thing, right? So they're like, "No," and they get sucked back to their land, but now they're without their powerful weapon, right? So it's like double bonus. Um, but then Panda Boy is like, "Oh, now I'm never going to get home again. They're gone, and I have no way to get back to my homeland." And Donatello's like, "Ha ha, no worries. I've had a lot of practice at, sending people to and from various other dimensions and whatnot. We'll get you sorted out." So then a few days later, Donnie zeroes in on this guy's home portal, home planet, home dimension, whatever it is, and they're able to send him back, and all's well that ends well. Next up, issue 8 of the Shredder. This was a good one. So it starts off with a bit of an action sequence between Shredder and the girl from the Dogstar clan that he kind of ran into in the last issue. They're in a bit of a scrap and whatever. And then just as the scrap looks like it's about to come to an end and her luck is run out, she says, she kind of gets down on her knees and is like, "Help me." So then the scene shifts to a restaurant where the guy that's been pulling the strings for the Dogstar clan, the nerd named Kenji, he's not part of the Dogstar clan. He just kind of took them over. And so his father, I'm assuming he leads some sort of criminal empire. He's at the restaurant with all of his like top lieutenants or whatever, plus Kenji. And he's talking about how Kenji, when he was spending all that time on his computer, he wasn't just playing games or whatever. He was perfecting his programming skills and whatever. So Kenji is able to control the Dogstar clan by these weird augments they have in them that he has access to on his computer, that if he allows them to set off, they basically, all these purple and green vines and creatures come out of them and they essentially die as whatever is inside them gets released and does all this damage to their enemies, kind of thing. And so Shredder is talking to this girl in the meantime about these augments that all the Dogstar clan soldiers have. And he's like, this isn't just like some technology that Kenji came up with or whatever that he's controlling. And he says, this stuff is alien in origin. Like, there's something weird going on here. And she's like, well, either way, he's figured out a way to control it. So we're screwed. I'm screwed because he could set the augments off at any time. He knows I betrayed him. I'm dead. And Shredder's like, no. You're down in my vault, which electronic things can't penetrate it. So as long as you stay in here, you can't die. So Shredder eventually finds a Dogstar clan member that he defeated and straps some sort of weird electronic device to it. And as Kenji and his dad are in this restaurant having the meeting with all these guys, he throws the body through the window and this device on it goes off, which causes the augment to go crazy. So all these vines and tentacles come shooting out. Kenji's father is killed in the process. All the other guys are offed. Kenji manages to escape, and he's like crying and like, "Argh!" So then Shredder basically kind of confronts him, whatever, and doesn't kill him. Returns back to this girl from the Dogstar clan that he was helping, and she's like, you can't, like, Shredder basically says, I'm going to Kenji's compound and I'm going to wipe out his whole operation, kind of thing, right? And this girl is like, you can't, like, Kenji's fortress is full of all this tech that nobody in their right mind would ever go up against. It's impossible. It's an impossible fight. And they say at the center of it all is this Yoshi Chen guy. Now, I don't know if we know who he is or not, but he's basically that dead body that's sitting against the wall that we saw last issue or the issue before, where all of this alien tech is kind of spawning from. So Shredder's saying, I'm going to invade his compound and I'm going to tear Yoshi Chen out of it and I'm going to put an end to this once and for all, kind of thing. And she's like, well, you're not going alone. And she's like, grr! She starts digging in her arms and she rips her augments off so that she can live and leave this vault that Shredder has her in and help him, sort of thing, right? Now, the only other thing that goes on during this whole thing is that Agent Avon, who was working with Shredder a number of issues ago, goes to the Earth Protection Force headquarters and talks to her boss, the guy that runs it all, that Director Bronze, and he talks about, oh shit, there's reports that Shredder is rampaging, all over Tokyo right now, and if he comes back here with an army, he said, like, we're screwed. And he's like, amass a force and get ready for this shit kind of thing. So we see the Earth Protection Force in New York start to mobilize against what might be coming from the Shredder if he does return to the States. And I still don't know whether Agent Avon is playing this bronze guy from the Earth Protection Force or if she's actually against Shredder now. I don't know, because they did seem to be developing quite a bond earlier in the series when they worked together for so many issues in a row, right? So yeah, we'll see. A little bit of a twist and a turn here and there maybe with her. We'll find out. Last up, issue 18 of the regular ongoing TMNT series. So this one left off with that big skeleton creature that Shinigami summoned from the portal, and then Splinter's like spirit kind of took it over, and it was holding Donnie inside of its rib cage, and in the meantime it was trying to chase down Karai and Shinigami because they from the Tree of Fates that he saw his son's deaths, they were part of it, so he's trying to chase them down. In the meantime, Splinter's wife, who was in the realm of the dead and was the person that looked after the Tree of Fates, she came through the portal into the land of the living last issue with Hamato Yoshi, a part of Splinter that was left behind in the land of the dead, a part of him that controlled his fear and everything, because we can see in his current state, he is so fearful of his son's dying that he saw on the Tree of Fates that he's not himself and he's going berserk about everything. So she believes that if she reunites Splinter, the rampaging Splinter, with his Hamato Yoshi self, his other side, everything will be fine. He'll be reunited with himself. He'll become himself. Everything will sort itself out. But this Hamato Yoshi gets into this New York scene with a giant skeleton creature and Ninja Turtles. And he's like, fuck this. And he starts running. He makes tracks, gets out of there. So then Leo's like, okay, guys, here's what we're doing. Donnie's in the skeleton thing. Mikey's lost in the land of the dead. That leaves me to go try and get Mikey. Raph, you go and try and get Hamato Yoshi. Break, right? So Leo goes after Karai, who has the little artifact that's capable of opening the portal to the land of the dead. And Raph and Splinter's wife go in search of Hamato Yoshi. In the end, Raph eventually tracks the guy down, and they have a bit of a skirmish, and the kid starts to respect Raph and his skills after getting over the fact that he's this giant green turtle creature. And Leo, in the meantime, finally gets the drop on Karai, gets the artifact back, even though he takes a big slash from Karai's sword and he's wounded. He's not mortally wounded or anything, and he's able to open the portal, and Mikey's able to come through. So the giant Splinter skeleton creature thing sees Mikey come back through the portal, which throws him for a loop because he saw Mikey's death when he went into the portal, right? So he's like, but he came back. He's like, oh, Mikey didn't die. So that gets him thinking a little bit. And then when he sees Hamato Yoshi, he's like, huh, you're me. And the kid's like, and I'm you. And then the two of them come together. Everything's good. Splinter's back. The giant skeleton creature is gone. And the turtles are like, Karai and Shinigami, we just saved your asses. The skeleton thing that was going to eat you guys or whatever is gone now. You owe us one. And they're like, we'll be back. Don't you worry about it. So they take off. And in the end, basically, we see Splinter's wife like just rejoicing in the fact that not only does she have her husband back, but the four boys are all good and their family is whole again. The last panels of the issue, though, we see a couple of creatures in the land of the dead at the Tree of Fates, and they're pissed off because they're like, the Tree of Fates, the warden of it is not here anymore. The tree is starting to wither. They're like, mortals are so like ridiculous. Like they're so short-sighted, and they're always opening the portal, closing the portal, going back and forth between both the land of the living, land of the dead, and they don't realize if they do that too much, it's just going to destroy their dimension or whatever like that, right? So these two are pissed and they're out for answers. So I'm assuming the next issue is going to be focusing on these two new beings and them getting to the bottom of what the hell's been going on with the Tree of Fates and the Land of the Dead sort of thing. So well, we'll wait a month to find out. Can't wait. Okay, this is a one-off, and this is the one I was talking about. That's something a little different. It is the Energon Universe 2026 special. So in this one, and look, it's got a whole like it all. Oh, look at that! It's got 4 different storylines going on, which encompass all the different franchises that are mixed together in this Energon universe. The first one is the longest one, and it features Matt Tracker, who's from the M.A.S.K franchise, which was an awesome cartoon in the 80s, and is slowly working itself into the Transformers G.I. Joe storyline. I don't know how long ago Matt Tracker showed up in it, but it's been going on a little while now, and he shows up every so often. They haven't become a huge part of the storyline yet, but it's there and it's happening. So in this first issue, it starts off with Rio Lindo. I'm not sure. I'm assuming that's a made up like South American type country, and I think it's one that was in the original GI Joe cartoon back in the 80s with Marvel. If I'm remembering the name properly, but essentially there's 2 bombings in the city. One takes out a general in his compound, and the other one takes out the revolution, a group of revolutionaries who were opposed to the general. That they had this fighting going on over, I don't know, they don't get too much into that storyline, but essentially that's these 2 targets that are hit. And elsewhere in the city, we see this woman sitting at an outside cafe, and this guy starts talking to her, and this guy is Miles Mayhem. If you remember Miles Mayhem, he showed up in an issue of G.I. Joe a while back, or Transformers, I don't remember which one it was in, but essentially when the humans in G.I. Joe figured out about the whole Transformers thing and that there's good ones and bad ones, and they approached Optimus Prime to kind of work with them, and Colonel Hawk or whoever it was leading that parlay with the Autobots. There was another guy on that kind of human side of things that was doing things a little differently, a little violently, and was trying to I don't know, usurp Hawk or whatever, or go behind his back to do his own thing and get control of the situation or whatever he was up to. And then he got ousted. He got kind of kicked out of that for being a maniac and whatever. And in Miles Mayhem, back in the M.A.S.K cartoon in the 80s, he was the head bad guy of the group Venom. So he is a bad guy. So he's sitting there, he's talking to this girl. He's like, I know you bombed those things, but why didn't you get paid first? Like, that makes no sense. You just left millions on the table. And so she's like, if I was the person that bombed these things, like, don't you think I'm kind of dangerous? Why would you be talking to me? And so he presents her with an offer about how the world is changing and we need to adapt. And he puts a briefcase on the table and opens it up, and it's a mask for her. So if you don't know M.A.S.K, really brief, it was essentially these 2 groups, M.A.S.K and Venom. M.A.S.K were the good guys, Venom were the bad guys. Kind of like with G.I. Joe, we got the good guys, then we got the terrorists. And each person had their own vehicle, which was capable of like modifying itself a little bit. Like Matt Tracker's Camaro here, the gull wing doors could open up and some little wings underneath would come out, and it could fly as well as be a car. And so they all had their little things that they did, and each person in these vehicles had a mask that they put on, that which gave them these special powers kind of thing. So that's why the whole thing's called M.A.S.K. So he gives her this mask, and she's intrigued and eventually joins his little team or whatever. So Matt Tracker gets wind of this. So he's in his car driving, blah, blah, blah. And he's radioing back to one of his contacts on the M.A.S.K team, like asking about some sort of break-in at a prison. And he's like, can you hack the system to find any information on who infiltrated that prison. And the guy's like, come on, look who you're talking to, right? So he's clackety clackety clack, and they get some footage of the attack, and there's this helicopter approaching the prison, and Matt Tracker's like, oh, that's no helicopter, that's the Blade Jet prototype. Miles Mayhem is the one who did this. And then it shows what happened in this prison break. So Miles Mayhem and the girl that he recruited, Vanessa, what was her last name? Warfield, and another person, or no, it's just the two of them. Yeah, it's just the two of them. And so they raided this prison, and they got out this guy named Sly Rax, whose nickname is the Wrecker. And so as they were waging war on the prison, Sly Rax had engineered an escape attempt and was taking down the guards. And eventually Miles and Vanessa come down, and he's like, Miles? Is that you? And he's all excited, right? And he's like, come with me, Sly Rax. So then you see the three of them walking out of the prison, all with their own mask on. So Miles is recruiting for his little faction, and that cannot be good news. So then Matt Tracker sees this, and he's like, and then he explains to his friend, like, yeah, Miles Mayhem was my old boss at that job and whatever, and he's a maniac, and he still has lots of contacts in the military. We are not safe from him. And the guy's like, well, can you be sure about that, Miles? And Miles is like, yeah, I'm pretty sure. So then it shows, like, he's been in his Camaro driving this whole time, and then it shows who he's driving from. There's a whole slew of army vehicles behind him chasing him, right, sort of thing. So so Matt and M.A.S.K are in a bit of trouble. So the last thing we see before this part of the issue ends off is Matt goes, all right, we're gonna have to engage and open things up. So then he presses a button on his watch, and then all of a sudden we see all these other watches around the world and all these other cities kind of light up with the M.A.S.K logo or whatever, and be like, okay, it's go time, right? So we're going to see all of the other M.A.S.K agents come on board, and I can't wait to see Rhino in comic book form. Rhino is the big rig, and I bought the toy from the 80s TV show many months ago, a couple years ago. I did an unboxing reveal on it, and it was my favorite vehicle. It's so cool. So I can't wait to see the rest of the M.A.S.K vehicles and characters in comic book form. It's going to be so good. Next up, the next story in this special was the shortest one, only 4 or 5 pages long. It shows this woman in like the Amazon rainforest or something. She's like stalking through the jungle. A snake attacks her, and she's like, yeah, and then she cuts its head off. She's being all savage, right? And then she's going to like gather food and whatever. And then finally on the last panel, she basically settles in for the night, and it pans out, and she is settling inside the chest cavity of Ironhide, the Autobot, who is looking pretty dead and kind of propped up between these two mountain sides or whatever, and she's kind of has a bonfire going on within his chest cavity. So there's evidence of Ironhide, right? He's not in great shape, but I think this is foretelling that we're going to see some more characters join the fray from the Transformers side of things. So that's awesome. The next one up was, if you remember in the Void Rivals review from the very start of this video, Proximus and his little buddy, the tag-along buddy that he had, were trying to find a way off planet to go after Salila. So suddenly we see them in space in one of the ships, but they've taken damage, and he's like, shit, we're going down, I can't control this thing anymore. They crash land on a very familiar looking planet if you've ever seen the 1986 Transformers animated movie. They landed on Junkion. Yes, they did. Now, we don't get to see any Junkions, but at first it looks like we're about to see one, but then this thing approaches them and asks what they're doing, and he's like, well, I'm trying to get to Earth. I need to go save my sister. And this thing takes its head off, and it's a person inside. It's a member of Cobra Law. And he's like, whoa, I'm from Earth. I want to get there. And then Proximus is like, well, I'm trying to chase my sister to Earth, and she's on board a Cobra Law spaceship. And he's like, whoa, like, what are the odds, right? So then they're all hot and heavy to get going and get to Earth, right? So Proximus and his little buddy have found a friend from Cobra Law, and I'm sure they will find their way to Earth at some point. But we'll probably find out about that in the next issue of Void Rivals. Now, the last story in this issue was a guy kind of giving a soliloquy saying, you know, I've impersonated everyone. I've been kings. I've been blah blah. I've been blah blah. So as soon as this was going on, I was like, oh, I know who this is talking. And then he says, and then I was given an assignment about finding Energon, and that changed my life. He's like, everybody wanted to use Energon for like weapons and whatnot. He said, I used it to create flesh. So then Zartan reveals himself. And so Zartan, if you don't know G.I. Joe, Zartan was the leader of the Dreadnoks, who were the swamp-dwelling ne'er-do-wells who often aligned with Cobra, but couldn't be counted on to maintain that alliance with Cobra. And in the TV show back in the 80s, if he was in the sunlight, he would turn blue and be like, Arr! I don't know if it was ever explained in the original cartoon series why, but that's what would happen. And he was the guy who could disguise himself as anybody. So I did this experiment. I created flesh out of Energon. It was perfect. You know, like I could impersonate anybody. I could be anybody. But he said I was foolish. And then it shows a sequence of him like the sun coming out while he's wearing this synthetic skin, and it burns the hell out of him, and his skin turns blue. So it's basically giving this reason for his original state of being in the G.I. Joe cartoon legitimacy, like a reason for that, right? And tying it in with this whole mashed up together G.I. Joe Transformers, Void Rivals, now M.A.S.K universe that we're seeing in all these comics, right? Which is kind of cool. And then we see who he's talking to, and it's General Hawk from the G.I. Joe team. And this is where we see Zartan lock up Hawk, take on his guys, and walk out. So Zartan is basically Hawk, and he's calling the shots at G.I. Joe. That cannot be good for anybody except Zartan. All right, onwards to Transformers. Just one lonely single issue as usual, and it is issue 32. This issue takes entirely on Cybertron, and it is very action-packed, fast-paced. It was over in an instant, basically. So the Autobots that were led by Elita 1 that went to confront Prime on Earth have taken the space bridge back to Cybertron. And when they get out of the space bridge, Elita 1's like, okay, everybody, it was easy for us to get to the space bridge when we came to Earth because there was just a couple of us. But now we got lots of people. We need to be very careful, very quiet, getting back to some safe lines, right? So they start rolling out and whatever, but pretty soon into their journey, as the Autobots are talking, they get dropped in on by a bunch of Decepticons led by Shockwave, and Elita 1's like, Shockwave? And he's like, he's missing an arm, he's missing his head, it's just a spark, kind of a little yellow, like, you know when there's like a lone light bulb hanging from the ceiling with no fixture or whatever? It looks like that's what's sticking up out of his neck, right? He's just had an ass kick, and Elita 1's like, Shockwave? How are you alive? And he's like, yeah, I'm tougher to kill than most. And he's like, Decepticons, attack! And we see some usual Decepticons, like from the G1 series, like obviously Shockwave's there, Breakdown, Thrust, Rat, Bat, some of the regulars. But then we see a mix of Transformers from other properties that were mixed in, like Lockdown, Sunstorm, Acid Storm, Black Arachnia. So it's a whole melange of Decepticons from various properties attacking the Autobots. And the first thing they do as soon as as this attack starts, it looks like they basically vaporize Bumblebee. So I don't know if he's going to be around anymore. And the Decepticons basically get the drop on the Autobots and are kicking the shit out of them. So Ultra Magnus is like, I need to help my friends. So then he transforms into his car carrier mode, and he's like, get on. So then he blasts down the road, and he's fucking go. And then he sees Shockwave and just like slams into him, transforms into robot mode, takes the fight to him. But again, the Decepticons just have the numbers advantage. probably the Energon advantage at this point too, and they're just kicking the shit out of the Autobots. So finally, Alita 1 is like, she takes the Matrix leadership out of her chest or wherever, and she's like, I need you. Why have you forsaken me? Light us in our darkest hour. And then finally, the Matrix of leadership opens up, and the bright light goes, and she's a new looking bot named Alita Prime, and she has an artifact in her hand known as the Star Saber. So she starts boom chopping up Decepticons, no problem, and really gets the jump on them and turns the tide of the battle. Now she's not able to dice them all, but she's able to put down enough of them that she can finally go, okay, now it's time to run. And they make tracks while Shockwave and whoever's left of his forces kind of gather themselves. And the last thing we see is Shockwave going, I need to talk to Alpha Trion. Alpha Trion. Why would Alpha Trion support a Decepticon? So I'm very curious to see what happens in the next issue if that meeting does occur, because like, is Alpha Trion being held at gunpoint to do things for the Decepticons? Has he changed his viewpoint of the war? Like, very curious. A very curious ending to this issue that has got me thinking and has got me very excited for July. Not that I'm wishing the summer away. Last up, G.I. Joe, and we got 4 issues this month. 4! Probably because they missed one a couple months ago, so I had to wait for them to get it in, and then I could move on with the ones that came after as well. So we've got 3 issues from kind of the Origins series. So we got issue 20, 21, and 22. So all 3 issues have a very different story in it, even though they're all kind of linked. So in the first one, Duke, if you remember in the issue 19 where it left off, Clutch and Duke had gone to meet Matt Tracker at a racetrack, and they were talking shop, even though Matt Tracker didn't really want to be found. He was talking to Clutch because they're old friends. But then Scrap Iron in a monster truck crashed the event and was taking the fight to Matt Tracker. And so Matt figured out, oh, you're working for Miles Mayhem now? Like, you sell out? He's like, hey, I'm an independent contractor. I take wherever the money goes, right? So then Matt Tracker's like, well, you're not the only one that brought a vehicle to the show. So he boop hits his watch, and then the Thunderhawk comes out, his Camaro. So the two of them get into like a chase. It goes out of the stadium into the city streets where there's kids playing or whatever. So Matt has to be like very careful not to create any collateral damage while he's luring Scrap Iron around the city. But at one point, he's kind of got Scrap Iron on the run, and then suddenly Clutch and Duke driving in Hound come up behind Scrap Iron and just douche get him. And so then Scrap Iron, Duke and Clutch jump out of Hound, and Hound transforms into a giant robot, and Scrap Iron's like, fuck this, and he gets out of Dodge. So then Matt is like, okay guys, like, what do you want from me? Like, I don't, like, Clutch is like, we better talk to him now or else he'll go back into hiding, right? And Matt's like, yeah, I never wanted to be found in the first place, but I do have something to do about this situation. But he's like, in the meantime, what do you guys want? And so essentially Clutch needs Matt Tracker to fix up Hound a bit. He's still not fully repaired, and he's not able to ping the locations of other Autobots around Earth, right? So they need that fixed so that they can find their comrades and swell their numbers, kind of thing, right? So they get that done, and then Matt takes off, and he's like, I'm not going back into hiding, but I can't stay here. I got something to do. So then I think that leads into the Energon special when he was talking to his buddy about getting the team back together, and he touching his watch and all the other watches went off, and he's assembling the team again, sort of thing. So I think this is the sequence of events that led to him doing that, right? So then Clutch and Duke and Hound they're talking, and Duke talks to Hound about like, take me to your leader sort of thing. So he wants to meet with Optimus Prime and figure out what the hell's going on with these giant transforming robots, right? So then Duke, the leader of the GI Joe team, Optimus Prime, the leader of the Autobots, they meet up in a neutral location and they start talking about, you know, the difficulties of being a military leader and having all that on your conscience. And then Duke finally asks Prime about Starscream, like, where's Starscream? Like, I want his ass. He killed my friend and I can't get it out of my head. And Prime's like, Starscream's dead. And so then Duke goes on a bit of a tirade about how, you know, he's like, ever since I saw Starscream kill my friend, I've wanted to destroy all robots. Didn't matter if they're Decepticon, Autobot. I wanted revenge on all of them. So essentially, he admits that, you know, he's seen reason and he understands that there's good ones and bad ones. And as long as Prime doesn't betray him and plan some sort of alien robot takeover of Earth, the two of them can work together, sort of thing. So in the end, you know, Clutch and Hound are watching these two from a distance and kind of joking around with each other and whatever. Um, in the end, what comes out of it is that Duke and, well, he's not Optimus Prime anymore. He's just Optimus or whatever, because the Matrix of Leadership has gone to Elita 1 in the meantime, right? They have worked out an arrangement where they are going to talk, share information, you know, collude together for the greater good, but they're still going to run their own separate outfits and maybe work together when the opportunity arises, whatever. But they're definitely going to be working together, but not working together, if you will, sort of thing, right? So then the last thing we see in that issue number 20 is Snowjob meet up with, who does he meet up with? With CoverGirl. It looks like they're in Asia somewhere. He meets up with CoverGirl in a bar, and they go over the Scarlet situation right now. CoverGirl's like, yeah, Scarlet's in deep with the Arashikage clan. She's gone there to get Jinx back, but we haven't heard from her. She's been there too long. And then she puts a poster on the table. It's like, wanted, Scarlet, dead or alive, right? So CoverGirl's like, you're bringing her back to us regardless. So it's like, ooh, shit. Ooh, how did Scarlet suddenly become on G.I. Joe's wanted list, right? So then in issue 21, essentially, is the entire mission to get Scarlet back. So we see Snowjob, Frostbite, and CoverGirl in an Arctic Cat, one of the best G.I. Joe vehicles of all time, driving through some snowy tundra on their way to the Arashikage clan headquarters. And meanwhile, at the headquarters, it's the middle of the night, and we see Scarlet's silhouette kind of slinking down the hallways, going up onto the roof, traversing down the roof, and then going out into the snow, where suddenly Jinx is there and confronts her, and she's like, shh. So, but before we figure out what either of them are up to, being out that late at night in the dark, we hear whoop, 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 and some Cobra helicopters and planes are inbound, and it's none other than Cobra Commander himself. Cobra commences an all-out assault on the Arashikage headquarters, and they're doing damage. They injure Jinx, they injure Storm Shadow's master. So, but while the assault's going on, Scarlet and Jinx are trying to hold off all the regular Cobra troops, while Storm Shadow goes after Cobra Commander himself. And even Storm Shadow's master is bested by Cobra Commander, and the commander eventually approaches this sword that's glowing pink. So I'm assuming it has something to do with Energon. And all they're after is this weapon, this sword. Cobra Commander gets his hands on it, fights his way past Storm Shadow, gets back onto the planes, takes off. And before they leave, a missile is launched into the Arashikage headquarters and blows the place all to hell. So Jinx is really injured. She's not dead, but she's severely injured. Storm Shadow's master is injured. Storm Shadow's fine. But Scarlet, who's also a little bit hurt, is kind of off, separated from them. And she is taken into custody by Snowjob and the rest of the crew and exfiltrated from that situation and brought back to headquarters. But as they're going back in the Snowcat, it kind of focuses in on Scarlet as the issue ends, and she is looking very, very pissed off as she's weeping a couple of tears here and there, right? So Um, I'm assuming she's a little bit pissed at her own comrades from taking her out of the situation, but more so pissed about Cobra's attack and the injuries to Jinx and everything else. So that sort of thing. But we'll have to wait and see what happens with her, because in issue 22 we don't get any clarity on that. So issue 22 is a whole separate thing. So it starts with Cobra Commander sitting on his throne with this new sword that he's gotten from Storm Shadow's lair, and he's like, Destro, I have a mission for you. We've got another Energon reading. You're going there to get this Energon. And Destro's like, Cobra Commander, surely I should stay here and continue working on weapons development and brokering deals and all that stuff. And he's like, are you disobeying my orders? And he's like, no, Cobra Commander, right? So Destro is sent away to check out this Energon reading. In the meantime, we see Risk, one of the newer members of the Joe team. Well, I guess he came along around the same time as everybody else, but he's new to me. He was never in the original series or any other series that I know of. He's a new character for these comic book issues. He's reliving so his name is Risk because he's risk assessment. So he weighs all the factors going into a mission and says, this is what we need, this is how we should do it, blah, blah, blah. So he's going over in his mind an old mission where he was confident about that he had everything sorted out. Him and his squad mates walked into this situation and they were way outgunned and a lot of people died and it was on his hands, sort of thing, right? So then we see Risk in the control room stating the parameters for a mission where they're going to go look for some Energon. Just so happens to be the same Energon reading that Destro's going to check out, right? So he's assembling a team and they're going to check it out, and it's in a place called Badikistan. And as they arrive there, it looks like, Dracula's castle kind of environment, right? And so they're entering this city, and so it's Risk, Baroness, and who the hell's the third? I can't remember the third now. Hold on one sec. Stalker. It was Stalker. So Risk, Baroness, and Stalker are checking this place out, and as they approach the city, they're like, where is everybody? Like, this is a ghost town. And then one of them's like, well, that is the rumor around here, is that this place is haunted. And as they're traversing the city and the alleyways and everything, they do see some eyes looking at them and some growling, and they're like, whoa, what the hell was that? So they're starting to get a little spooked. Meanwhile, Destro, Astoria, and Mercer are in the city as well, doing the exact same things the Joes are, and they're having the same experiences. So finally the two teams come head to head, and they start arguing and being like, we're getting the Energon. No, you're getting the Energon. And it's like, why are you terrorizing this with all these animal impressions and whatever? And it's like, that's not us. Like, we've been getting the same thing. And then all of a sudden they hear this big growl, and then they all freak out. And then that's when the fighting starts, and they start shooting at each other and fighting each other. And as the fighting's going on, chaos starts to evolve, and suddenly the various members of these two parties are kind of disappearing, being sucked in by green tentacles and whatnot. And as the issue kind of ends off, we see he's kind of like, he works with Cobra sometimes. He's kind of like the Dreadnoks. He's kind of his own thing, but he's usually more in line with Cobra than with G.I. Joe. His name is Crystal Ball, and he's kind of like he can hypnotize people and use magic and stuff like that. He's kind of like a sorcerer. And in the original cartoon, he was voiced by Vincent Price. And if you don't know Vincent Price, look him up. He does the voice in the Thriller song that Michael Jackson did in the video, like, and all the laughing and stuff. And he was like a horror guy back in the day in horror movies and stuff like that, like killing vampires and shit like that. Really cool actor, really amazing voice. So it was cool. Crystal Ball was such a cool character in that original G.I. Joe cartoon, and then to have him voiced by the Vincent Price, like, that was awesome, right? So Crystal Ball makes his presence known here, and he's like, ha ha ha, these suckers, like these rubes, all I need to prey on is their worst fears. And so basically every trap all these guys are falling into as they're being picked off is Crystal Ball is using their biggest fears against them to get them to succumb and be captured or whatever. And it looks like he's also been able to use Energon to enhance his capabilities. So once again, Energon factors in to everything in these G.I. Joe and Transformers and Void Rivals issues, right? And M.A.S.K. and everything. It's so cool. And the last thing we see in that issue is Mercer's the last one standing. He's the last one to get taken captive by Cristobal. And as he enters a room in a building, his biggest fear, he sees the people that were killed on that mission that he was thinking about back in the day that he got everybody killed on. He sees the ghosts of these people coming at him, and he's like, yeah, fuck. Right? So really cool. Psychological fucking warfare with Cristobal. Count me in. Last up, issue 328 of the regular ongoing series. If you remember where we left off in the last one, it was Don Moreno, Jinx, and who was the other girl? CoverGirl. Man, CoverGirl's getting around, eh? She's been in a lot of shit. Those three, plus Downrange and Sherlock, were invading that temple in the jungle where the Terrordrome was inside of it. But when they got in there and they were going to blast their way into it, they figured out, oh, fuck, this is that special armor plating that's like blast resistant or whatever. And if we set these charges off, it's going to blow sky high. Like, so they took the charges off and whatever. And we're trying to make tracks out of the temple, but then all these Revanche guards were chasing them, and were getting into this big firefight. So we're continuing in that kind of vein. So they continue to fight these Revanche guards off and everything, and they're about to exfiltrate, and CoverGirl's been injured, but suddenly one of the Revanche soldiers, he had his head like partially chopped off, but he's still kind of functional, like, and he raises a rocket launcher, and blah. Don Moreno kind of sees him at the last minute, but she can't get to him in time. So he lets this rocket go. It hits the Terrordrome. The Cobra forces inside the Terrordrome see it coming. They're like, shit, put the shielding down, put the shielding. Boom, too late. So the Joe girls are like, they see this happening, and they're fucking trying to get out of the temple and pyramid as quick as they can. So they all kind of hit the exit at the same time, just as everything blows sky high. Dawn's the last one coming out, and she kind of takes the worst of the explosion. And this jarring explosion shakes something loose in her head. So essentially, Dr. Mindbender, with his brainwave scanner back in the past, put like a lot of Snake Eyes' memories and experiences into Don Moreno's head. So she has this kind of weird connection to Snake Eyes. And so we see her seeing some stuff that went on in the past when Mindbender had Snake Eyes in the brainwave scanner machine, and what he was inserting into Snake Eyes' brain. So essentially, all we see is an image of an attic with like rock and roll posters on the wall, some records here and there, a military uniform hanging on the wall. So it's Snake Eyes' memories of his attic, and he plants a little Easter egg in this attic, and he's like, when this Easter egg finally reveals itself, all hell's gonna break loose. It'll be chaos. So we don't know what's going on. We just see this image of this attic, and that there's something hidden in that attic, and it's hidden in the recesses of Snake Eyes' brain, and also now apparently inside of maybe Don Moreno's brain, since she took over a lot of Snake Eyes' shit when Dr. Mindbender fucked around with her head, right? So she's very disoriented after it, and she's like, something happened, like I'm seeing this vision, I saw this stuff happening. And they're like, well, we got to make tracks because this thing's going to blow even more. So they start trying to exfiltrate. And in the meantime, as they're making their way away from the temple, one of the girls, I think Sherlock, radios back to G.I. Joe base and is like, guys, something happened here with Dawn. And I think her, Snake Eyes, and Sean Collins, they're all linked together in various events. Something might be compromised, FYI. So, and then that's kind of the last thing we see of the Joes. Then the scene shifts to Revanche headquarters on that Cobra Island, the casino where they were kind of hiding, or where they were making their main base. And we see like them complaining that, shit, another Terrordrome blown up. Like that's the 5th one in the last 2 months or whatever. So they're pissed off about that. And then suddenly Dr. Mindbender, who is now working for them because he had really no other choice, starts saying, ho, 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 something's weird's going on here. And the last thing we see is Dr. Mindbender sitting at his brainwave scanner machine, and he's like, this is so puzzling. Like, all of a sudden, this image just popped up on the screen. And sorry, no, it wasn't Dr. Mindbender that originally planted the attic image in the Easter egg in Snake Eyes' brain. It was a different scientist. It wasn't Mindbender. But it was Mindbender afterwards that was fucking around with Don Moreno and transferring Snake Eyes' stuff. Yeah. So the last thing we see is like this weird image popped up on the Brave and Wave scanner, and it's the image of that attic with no Easter egg showing, just the image of that attic. And he's like, huh, so puzzling. What does this mean? Right? So really cool that now Mindbender is aware of this attic image. So how's that going to tie into how Don's feeling about it? What's going to happen? Can Mindbender somehow control this Easter egg if he's able to find it in that attic and find out what it does? So I can't wait to see what happens. Now, whether we'll see what totally happens with that storyline in the next issue, I kind of doubt it. I feel like it's going to be a long drawn out one. But hey, step by step, issue by issue, can't wait. Peace.
Meow.